Okay, we're going to do the urinary system now. So we're going to cover the important functions of the kidney. Um, I'll try to find my thing. Okay, so basically we want to maintain the chemical consistency of the plasma in our blood. Okay, so we're talking about since our cells expel their waste into the blood as well as carry nutrients to the cells, we have to filter out not only the waste products, but we also have to condition the blood because as you move through your day and you drink fluids and you eat food and you sweat, all of the constituents of your blood change, and the kidneys are responsible for maintaining the homeostasis of the blood, making sure there's enough ionic content, enough water, enough, and doesn't have uric acid in it and things like this. So, blood, 1/5 of your blood goes to your kidneys on each pump of blood, each pump of your heart, and it filters about 1 liter of blood every minute, but only 125 milliliters will enter the tubular system, which will eventually form 1 cc or 1 milliliter per minute of urine. So it's going to send the toxins and metabolic waste and excess water out of the body. The main waste products are nitrogenous compounds from metabolic activity. These are urea, uric acid, and creatine. Maybe if you've had a urinalysis, you've seen these words before. So the organs of the urinary system are, as you probably know, I'm trying to find my, okay, kidneys, right? The kidneys filter the blood. The ureters transport the urine which was formed from the kidneys to the urinary bladder, which stores the urine, and it's expelled through the urethra outside the body. So here's what it looks like. Here's an actual cadaver here. Here's the kidney. And you can see the renal artery coming in, and then the renal vein going out, and the renal artery underneath. And here's the left kidney. A little bit of an odd shape there. And here's the adrenal gland line. So here's the right adrenal gland here. And then the ureter is this right here. So I can't follow that very well. And the right one is here. And that goes down to the bladder here. And then the urethra will be there. So again, on this side, a little bit easier to understand. The kidneys are here with the adrenal glands atop. The renal vein and artery feeds the kidneys. The ureters will leave the kidneys, go down to the bladder, and then the bladder will release into the urethra. There's sometimes some confusion between ureter and urethra, so you just have to find a way to remember that. The kidneys are reddish brown in color. They're located, as we stated before, in the digestive system, retroperitoneally, so they're behind the peritoneum. They're lateral to T12 to L3 vertebrae, so not exactly covered by ribs, but except for one. And again, everyone's a little bit different. The average kidney is about 12 centimeters. Remember, 2.54 centimeters per inch. Leaves those at about 4.5 to 5 inches. 6 centimeters wide, 3 centimeters thick. The hilum, remember we talked about, organs that have vessels and things entering and leaving. So that's the hilum of the kidney, and that's also where the ureter will leave. So blood vessels go in and ureters leave. Also nerves. So each kidney has a fibrous capsule. That's for protection. And usually this fat capsule is external to the fibrous capsule. If you look at a fresh cadaver and you open it up, it's going to be, you're going to look at just this big yellow mass, and that's called perirenal fat, which is on the outside of the fibrous capsule. And the capsule, of course, is made of dense irregular connective tissue, and it inhibits the spread of infections, and it also protects it. The fat actually protects it against, kidney punches, the renal fascia is external to the perirenal fat capsule, and that also contains fat. So the kidneys need quite a bit of protection. You can see, there we go. Here's the 12th rib. Here is T12 right here, right? And L1 would be here, and L2 would be here. So it doesn't, not depicted exactly the way they describe it, but most of it is really under the last two ribs. And that's again for protection. These are a vital organ. Excuse me, you only need one, but they're a vital organ. So if we look at the peritoneal cavity, and we've removed all the organs, of course, here you see the inferior vena cava and the aorta. You see the intrusion of the vertebral body into the abdominal cavity, and creating these two big valleys on either side, and the kidneys lie in these. And on the left side, superior to it, will be the spleen. Way back in this deep valley on each side of the vertebral column. So you can see where the vein and artery enter on each side, and the right kidney is a little bit lower than the left kidney because the liver's in the way. So here's what it looks like on a CT scan. Again, kidney here, kidney here, and see this vertebral body here, aorta here, vena cava here. These are all your paraspinal muscles back here. Here's the spinous process. These are all muscles here. Here's the liver over here, huge liver. And then you see parts of the intestines over here. So in frontal section through the kidney, we'll see the renal cortex. Remember, the cortex is on the outside. The superficial region, the granular appearance, the renal medulla, that's the inside. Cone-shaped renal pyramids, the renal pelvis, the major and minor calyces. We'll also see the renal arteries and the arcuate arteries. Let's take a look at those. So here's the renal vein, and the renal artery will be deep to that. Here's a ureter coming out. So on the outside, remember, here's the capsule on the outside. The cortex is this area between the capsule and the renal pyramids. The renal pyramids are these structures here because they look, I guess, like inverted pyramids. I'd call them triangles myself, but okay. So each kidney has approximately 7 or 8, probably between 6 and 10, somewhere along there. The major calyx is, okay, this is the minor calyx here. It's the space. All of these contain tubules which will expel urine down here. This will fall into this space called the minor calyx. As it moves into this larger space, that's the major calyx. And then right here is the renal pelvis. So the major calyx, yeah. So minor calyx here, major calyx here, and renal pelvis, this area here. It's just the flow of urine as it comes out of the tubular system. It'll flow like this and down here. So the cortex is this area. I'm sorry. Yeah, on the outside of this. So this is the dividing line between the cortex and the medulla. So the inside, this is all medulla and renal columns. These are the renal columns which are between the pyramids. Okay. So blood flow comes in the renal artery, and then it starts branching into segmentals, and it's going to go to each of these pyramids, and we'll follow those through. So if you can see, the renal artery comes in and it branches into segmental arteries, which will go to each of these segments. As it branches again, I want to make sure we get a flow here. Oh, it's not the way I want to see it. This is the flow here. The renal artery branches into segmental arteries, and this will go to how many renal pyramids you have. So approximately 7. Then that will go into the interlobar artery, because it goes between each renal pyramid or lobe. That will go into an arcuate artery. That will go into a cortical radiate artery. That will branch and become an afferent glomerular arteriole. So we say afferent arteriole. Then it's going to go through the glomerulus. That's a filter. Then it will exit through the efferent arteriole. Then it'll go to the peritubular capillaries and vasa recta. This will go to the cortical radiate, the arcuate, the interlobar, the renal vein, and the inferior vena cava. You need to memorize the flow of blood through the kidneys. That just takes a few minutes a day. Okay? And if you follow it through the actual kidney, it's a little bit easier maybe. So you have your renal pelvis, your segmental arteries, your interlobars, your cortical radiates. Then we're going to go up here. No, sorry. This one is the arcuate. Yeah, right. Arcuates. So they arc. So I remember that. The arcuates arc. From the arcuate, we're going to go to the cortical radiates. Because in the cortex, right, the outside radiates. They look like they're radiating. Okay, cortical radiates, and that's going to go into the glomerular complex. The nerve supply is the renal plexus, and these are all autonomic, and you don't need to know where they come from. You just need to know, where are we? Sorry. These are autonomic, celiac and splanchnic, as you've heard before. A nephron is the functional unit of the kidney. Each kidney has approximately 1 million nephrons. A nephron is microscopic and cannot be replaced. So if it's damaged, that's it. So the mechanisms of urine production, first we need to filter the blood. Okay? And what we're doing, remember this, we have red blood cells here. Remember we have this layer of white blood cells. And then we have plasma here. Well, what we're after is more or less the plasma minus the we don't want glucose to pass. We don't want large molecules to pass, like proteins. And we definitely don't want to lose any cells. We're reconditioning the plasma. Okay, so we need to filter out the plasma from these cells and large molecules. So basically, to make urine, we put blood into a strainer. Okay, a strainer has holes, right? So the blood cells will come in along with all of the liquids, and the plasma will be squeezed out and go into a tubular system to be reconditioned. Okay, and then we have the cells and just enough plasma to move them onward. Okay, so then we have resorption. So most nutrients, water, and essential ions will be reclaimed by the body because they're essential. You don't want to lose water unless you have too much and your blood pressure is too high. Secretion is an active process of removing undesirable molecules. Okay, so here we go. Our corticoradiate artery is here, and from there we're going to branch off, and this is going to be our afferent arteriole. This is the glomerular capsule. This whole complex is called the glomerulus here. This is the strainer. Remember, if you're making spaghetti, right, you have a strainer here, yes? You have little feet on it. You pour your pot of spaghetti in here, and all the water comes out, but the spaghetti stays in there. It's similar here. The blood is going to come out here, the cells are going to stay within the capillaries, but the plasma is going to be filtered out. It's going to leak out here. Once it leaks out, it's now called filtrate. You have to understand the nomenclatures here. So blood, the liquid part of blood, is called plasma. Once it's filtered, it's called filtrate. Once it's finished the filtering process and goes into the collecting duct, then it's urine. Okay? Plasma, filtrate, urine. So right here, it's filtrate. In here, it's plasma. In here, it's filtrate. When it goes down to the collecting ducts, then it's urine. So glomerular filtration right here. This is the filtration unit right here. Tubular resorption happens here. Tubular, that's so something is resorbed from the tube. So the water and the ions are going to be resorbed right back into capillaries. You see this afferent arteriole right here? The water's going to go right back into it. So the body is reclaiming the water. And then farther down the tubular system, there's tubular secretion. So the tube will secrete maybe salt, maybe water. It depends on what the conditions are in your body at the moment. So try to get these three processes in your mind. So the nephron has two basic parts, the filter, and then a bunch of tubes. Actually, it's going to be like this. Descending loop, ascending loop, and then it's going to go to a collecting duct. Okay? And then the renal corpuscle. So the tubules, these are the tubules here, tubule, and this is the corpuscle. So this is the strainer. I'm sorry, got them backwards. This is the strainer. They should have had this first. I don't mean to confuse you, really. And the tubules here, what happens, the reason we have tubes is to give the filtrate time, right, to give back the water the ions and anything else that the body needs. And all of this is fine-tuning, fine adjustments. So it takes some time for the filtrate to move through these tubules, so it gives the body time to make these fine adjustments before it throws away whatever goes into the collecting duct. The collecting duct now will go into the minor, major, and pelvis, and then into the ureters and down into the bladder and urethra. It's gone once it's in the collecting duct, pretty much. So the renal corpuscle, this is the first part of the nephron, so remember the word nephron. That's the functional unit of the kidney. The renal corpuscle is the glomerulus and the glomerular capsule. The glomerulus is, okay, we'll say tuft of capillaries. It's the afferent arteriole that goes in will now branch into many capillaries. And then it'll leave over here. And then the capsule catches the filtrate and sends it down a tube. I'm going to do that a million times. And you should draw it yourself. So the glomerular capsule, it's also called, the old name is Bowman's capsule, so if you see that anywhere. It has visceral and parietal layers of simple squamous cells and podocytes. Now we'll see a picture of that, it'll make it clearer. The filtration membrane is actually the membrane of the capillary. The filter that lies between the blood and the glomerulus and the capsular space. So you have that's the capsule, and you have the afferent and the efferent arterioles there, and then you have the capillaries in here, right? The space around here, which is the collecting space, right, as the filtration membrane. We have 3 layers, sorry. This is a filter that lies between the blood and the glomerulus and the, yeah, right. Okay, so the capillaries have these 3 layers. The actual, as we know, let me start from scratch. The capillaries are made of simple squamous epithelial cells like this, and they are fenestrated. We say fenestrated? Fenestrated endothelium. Okay, so fenestrated means they have windows or holes in them, right? So that's where the plasma will filter through. Got it? There are also filtration slits between processes of podocytes. So podocytes are cells that live on top of, the capillary wall. So don't forget the basement membrane. The basement membrane is between, right on the outside of the endothelial cells. Then we have these podocytes. And these podocytes, podo means foot. So podocytes sort of look like this. And these are the podos. And these are filtration slits. Okay, filtration slits between the foot processes. These are the foot processes of the podocytes. And then our basement membrane. Basement membrane and slit diaphragm. These hold back, right, because this is a strainer. So they're going to strain most proteins. What passes through will be water, ions, glucose, which will be resorbed. These will all be immediately resorbed. Amino acids, because they're very small, and urea. These are all going to be immediately resorbed. And the urea will be passed on to form urine. So here we go. Afferent means in. So we're going in, and what I want you to notice is the diameter of the afferent arteriole is larger than the diameter of the efferent. So if you have more blood coming in and then a smaller space to go out, what does that mean? It increases the pressure in these capillaries. So that increased pressure pushes the plasma out into this glomerular capsular space. Okay? So this is the parietal layer of the glomerular capsule. Again, this is simple squamous epithelial cells. These are the glomerular capillaries. They're fenestrated, so they have holes in them. And then we have these podocytes. This is the nucleus of the podocyte. Stop it. These are nuclei. These are the feet of the podocytes and make the slits. Okay? And this is the visceral layer of the glomerular capsule. So this is the parietal layer, and this is the visceral layer. And then, yeah. So, afferent in here, efferent coming out right here, and this will be the tubule. So this is just a close-up of what the glomerular capillary looks like. Here are the fenestrations. Here are the podocytes, big old fat podocyte with all these little feet, and these are the filtration slits. Okay. There we go. So again, it looks like this. This is the inside of the capillary. So the plasma will go through. Here's the basement membrane. The basement membrane is very porous. So, and here are the feet of the podocytes. Here are the slit membranes. So it's going to go through the filtration slits rather. So anything that's bigger than this, won't get through. And anything that's bigger than this won't get through. So basically, we're trying to filter out the things we want and let go through the things that we do want. So the renal tubules, so the filtrate now proceeds into the renal tubules from the glomerulus. Now, we have sections of tubule. The first section is called the proximal convoluted tubule, or PCT. Then we have the nephron loop, which has 3 parts: the descending loop, the descending thin limb, the ascending thin limb, and the thick ascending limb. That'll make sense when we look at the picture. Then there's the distal convoluted tubule. Okay? That will then go into the collecting ducts, and as soon as it does, now it's called urine. And these will be collected from, so if you have a collecting duct here, it'll receive, from one tubule system here, another tubular system here, another tubular system here, like this. So from several nephrons, that's what that means. These play a very important role in conserving body fluids because while it's in the collecting duct, you can still pull water out. But all the urine is already formed, and this will be it's more or less in emergency cases. If your body doesn't have enough fluid and it needs to conserve it, it can pull water from a collecting duct, but it's not its primary purpose. ADH is antidiuretic hormone. These will respond to antidiuretic hormone, which will increase the permeability of the collecting ducts and the distal convoluted tubules to water, so it can pull water back into the peritubular capillaries. So here we are again. Afferent, efferent arterioles, they go into the glomerular capsule, and here we go with the tubular system. All this convolution, this is our proximal convoluted tubule. And the purpose of this is because this arteriole right here is going to come and wrap itself right around all of this to collect to reclaim the water that passed through. Then it's going to descend. Here's the thick descending loop here. Here's the thin descending loop. Here's the loop. Here's the thin ascending loop and the thick ascending loop. Then it's going to go into this distal convoluted tubule where it's all convoluted again. And that will finally end up in the collecting duct. Okay, remember, these ducts are lined with cuboidal cells, simple cuboidal epithelial cells. And these will allow different things to pass through. And then you have capillaries surrounding all of these loops, and they will either reclaim things that are needed or put things back in. And remember that the fluids in our plasma change almost on a minute-by-minute basis. So we have two types of nephrons. I don't know if we call them classes or there's really just two types. Cortical and juxtamedullary. So the corticals are obviously the ones that are more towards the outside, and the juxtamedullary are the ones that are more closer to the medulla. So we have more corticals than juxtamedullary. They have slightly different functions. And these juxtamedullaries contribute to the kidney's ability to concentrate urine. So here's what the cortical ones look like. These are the corticals up here. This is a juxtamedullary down here. So the cortex is up here and the medulla is down here. So they have different different locations within the kidney. If you'll notice, the loops on the cortical nephrons are very short, and the loops on the juxtamedullaries are very long. So it gives the body more time to either remove or maintain water. So a lot of water in and out depending on the present needs of the body at that moment. So again, let me just go through. We have our cortical radiate artery here, and then we have our afferent going into the capsule, the efferent coming out, and you see right here, see how the capillaries surround these proximal convoluted tubule? These are peritubular capillaries. Peri meaning around, tubular is around the tubes. Peritubular capillaries. Okay. Vasa recta are these communicating, if you will, capillaries that go from the peritubular capillaries called vasa recta. I don't know why, but okay. Okay, so where are we? So we go to the proximal convoluted tubules, then the descending fat loop, the descending thin loop, the ascending thin loop, the ascending fat loop, and that goes back up, and that's going to go out to the collecting duct. This is going to go down to the minor calyx, the major calyx, that's an A, the pelvis, renal pelvis, to the ureter. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the capillaries that are associated with the nephrons. These are called peritubular because they go around the tubes in the cortical nephrons, or vasa recta in the juxtamedullary nephrons. Okay, glomeruli, again, produce filtrate that becomes urine and is fed and drained by arterioles, the afferent and efferent. The efferent arteriole has a smaller diameter than the afferent, and this generates a pressure, right, inside the glomerulus, or actually inside the capillaries, which pushes, you know, this filtrate or plasma out of the capillaries and into the pericapillary space. And then 99%, remember it's 1 cc per minute, actually enters the tubules. So the peritubular capillaries, these arise from the efferent arterioles draining the cortical glomeruli. They're adapted for absorption. They're low pressure, porous capillaries. The vasa recta continue from the efferent arterioles of juxtamedullary nephrons, are thin-walled looping vessels, and they descend into the medulla, juxtamedullary medulla. They're part of the kidney's urine concentrating system. Okay. So the we're going to talk about the nephrons that are juxtaglomerular. We call it the juxtaglomerular complex. Functions in regulating blood pressure. Remember, that's just a homeostatic parameter that we need to keep equalized. This is an area of specialized contact between the terminal end of the ascending loop and the afferent arteriole. Picture is far more descriptive than these words. Then we have granular cells. These are modified smooth muscle cells, and they have these secretory granules. It's similar to an endocrine cell because the granules contain renin, and renin is a hormone. It's secreted in response to low blood pressure or falling blood pressure in the afferent arteriole. The macula densa is an area of cells at the end of the nephron loop adjacent to the granular cells, and these are epithelial cells. They monitor the solute concentration in the filtrate, and they signal the granular cells to secrete renin in response to what it finds. And this will initiate the renin-angiotensin mechanism. These are to raise and lower blood pressure, to keep the blood pressure within boundaries. Then we have these mesangial cells. These are located around the capillaries of the glomerulus and constrict to control the blood flow. As you can imagine, it's very important to maintain how much blood goes through the glomeruli at all times in response to the needs of the body. Again, they also detect blood glucose levels by sending processes, which are membrane extensions, into the lumen of the capillary. They're like sensing mechanisms. These are beautiful. Then we have the extraglomerular mesangial cells, and these interact with the macula densa and granular cells, again to regulate blood pressure. So here we go. The granular cells are these here. So these are, in a particular way, they're sensory cells, but they don't send information to the brain. They send it locally to these extraglomerular mesangial cells. And the macula densa are these cells right here. These are the ones that actually secrete the renin in response to blood pressure. The extraglomerular mesangial cells are the ones right here. So if you see this picture on an exam, these are the granular cells here. These are the extraglomerular mesangial cells, and this is the macula densa, and it's in the afferent arteriole. See this afferent arteriole will loop and pass right here. So this is a part of the afferent arteriole. This is the juxtaglomerular complex. So it contains the afferent and efferent arterioles, and then all of these cells here. So you can see it on a scanning electron micrograph here. Okay, I hope that's clear. The ureters carry urine from the kidneys to the bladder. It has an oblique entry into the bladder, and is posterior to the bladder, and it prevents backflow of urine, so it doesn't go back up the ureters. The ureter has a mucosal lining, which is transitional epithelium. Now, by mucosal, we just mean it has a lot of goblet cells. Gosh, I knew I could do that. Goblet cells embedded in the transitional epithelium. Remember, transitional epithelium looks like pseudostratified, sort of. It kind of looks like bubbles. Okay, on the outside of the bladder, right? Or actually it's on the inside. Sorry, inside. So that as this fills up, these will stretch out. Okay. So it has two muscular layers, an inner longitudinal and outer circular, and then adventitia, just ordinary connective tissue. So here's the lumen. All right. The mucosa has transitional epithelium, so this is all transitional epithelium here. This is the lamina propria. Here are the muscles, and then the adventitia way out here. So the bladder is a collapsible muscular sac, stores and expels urine. A full bladder is spherical and expands into the abdominal cavity. An empty bladder lies within the pelvis and is flat like that. The urachus is outside of the bladder. It's a ridge, and it's a remnant from the fetus. It's a ridge on the posterior pelvic wall, and it attaches to the bladder. The prostate in males lies directly inferior to the bladder, so the prostate is right here, and the urethra goes right through it. So the uterus, in a female, the uterus is superior to the bladder, superior and anterior to the bladder. So you can see if she's carrying a baby in here, it's going to squish her bladder. That's why they have to go to the bathroom all the time. So you can see it has a very bizarre shape here. And this is the urachus right here. Here's the pubic symphysis. Oh, I'm sorry. Superior, sorry. This is anterior here. This is posterior here. I lost my orientation. The bladder pushes up against the pubic symphysis. Okay. The uterus is superior to the bladder. So again, here's the urethra out here, and in males the urethra goes through the prostate, which is right here. Then you have your seminiferous vesicles here, and here's your urethra here. Oh, that's a long urethra. Okay. So the urinary bladder has three layers. Mucosal lining, because urine is acidic, so you need mucus to protect the other cells of transitional epithelium. There's a thick muscular layer called the detrusor muscle. And then on the outside you have fibrous connective tissue. This is just the microscopic view of it. So here's our bladder. Here are our ureters entering posteriorly. And and then they enter here at the uretic orifices. There are rugae on the wall here. Here's peritoneum superiorly. So the neck of the bladder is, this area here. The trigone is this triangular area here. Here's the internal urethral sphincter. This is autonomic. Here's the prostate. Here's the as the urethra goes through the prostate, it's called the prostatic urethra. Then we have the external sphincter. This one is skeletal, consciously controlled. And then the spongy urethra out here go through the penis. And obviously females don't have that. So in the female we just have the internal sphincter here and the external sphincter here. So the urethra is transitional epithelium, so that can stretch at the proximal end, and then stratified and pseudostratified columnar in the mid area in males, and stratified squamous epithelium at the distal end in males and females. Okay, and then the internal and external urethral sphincters. Remember, the internal is autonomically controlled and the external is skeletally controlled. Obviously in females it's much shorter than in males. The prostatic urethra is just that portion that goes through the prostate. The intermediate part of the urethra goes through the urogenital diaphragm, and the spongy goes through the penis in males. This is just a picture of the neural control. Again, we're in the pons. Okay, and the pons is much higher than the medulla, which controls breathing and heart rate. So now this is much higher. It's on the pons, and there are the different autonomic controls. So the disorders we have are urinary tract infections. These are bacterial. In most cases, they're bacterial. And most of the time, it's bacteria moving up the urethra. Okay, and it causes a burning sensation when peeing. Peeing is called micturition. There's renal calculi, which we call kidney stones. There's bladder cancer. That's 3% of all cancers. It's not very common. It's a little bit more common in men. Then kidney cancer arises from epithelial cells. Remember, cancer is an uncontrolled replication of body cells, and most cancers are of epithelial cell origin. Okay. As we get older, the kidney and bladder function declines. That's because cells undergo apoptosis, which I've said a million times. And when certain cells die, then the other cells have to pick up, what was lost by those cells. So function declines. Nephrons decrease in size and number. Tubules are less efficient. Filtration declines. Recognition of desire to urinate is delayed, so that's why they wet their bed. And loss of muscle tone in the bladder. That's it for now.